Well, welcome to 2025. Happy New Year. We're glad you're with us. Hopefully you don't get bogged down by all the big plans that you have coming. Hopefully you don't get discouraged when you don't meet the expectations. We want to help you out with some of that. That's why we're starting off 2025 in this way. So invite a friend, join us. It's going to be a great time. And as always, leave a comment for us. We're ready to pray with you. We love getting to do both of those things. But I don't want to waste any more time. I want to jump right into 2025, and I want to get started with this first message from Pastor Chip. Don't go anywhere. Invite a friend, and let's dive right in.
Have you ever said something like this? We'll do that whenever life slows down a little bit. Or maybe something like, I'm just in a busy season right now, but I think things are about to slow down. If you're like me and most people, you probably have, especially this time of year, right? We're in the new year. We've made some New Year's resolutions. We think that this is the time to lose the weight, save the money, be more intentional, all the things. But then life gets really busy. And we think, well, it's just crazy right now, but things are going to slow down. Things will ease up. And that time just never seems to come. That magical time in life where everything slows down, stress fades away, your calendar's not full, and you have time to do and be all the things. I just don't know that it exists. And honestly, I'm not sure it ever will. But beyond that, I'm not 100% sure that it was ever meant to. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, that's what we're going to talk about in this series that we're calling Too Blessed Not to Be Stressed. That idea that maybe our lives weren't meant to be too slow. Here's the thought. As followers of Jesus, we know that this life and all the blessings that we enjoy in it, they're given to us by God, right? But when we say that, when we all acknowledge that, I think there's a few implications of that truth that we can tend to ignore. What do I mean? First off, when I say that this life and all the blessings we enjoy in it are given to us by God, I think we need to understand that an implication of that is you and I today are blessed far above and beyond most people in the world and almost everyone throughout history. Now, that may not feel true to you because you're struggling to pay your bills. There's never enough money left over at the end of the month. You don't know how you're going to pay to send your kids to college. Or maybe you're living comfortably, but you'd say that you're not rich. Well, what you got to understand is if you eat 3 meals a day, you're in the wealthiest 25% of the world's population today, right now. And not to mention, looking back over history, the blessings that we enjoy today are absolutely incredible and really unimaginable, even just 100 years ago, 2 generations ago. And with all these blessings that we've been given in medical advances, technological advances, entertainment advances, whatever, with all of those blessings, I think comes a faster pace of life, right? all of these new things make more things possible. For instance, our phones that we hold in our hand, that we use throughout the day, they obligate us to more. They compel us to more. They give people more access to us no matter where we are or what we're doing. And I think that we kind of ignore that. It doesn't become a reality that we feel, but it does change the way that we look at things. For instance, you go through the drive-thru, and if it's not Chick-fil-A where your food is hot piping, your order's right, and you get it all done in 4.5 minutes, you're frustrated. They got my order wrong. This doesn't taste good. It took me 7 minutes to get my family dinner. Rewind just one generation in the past. How would your mom, or 2 generations, how would your grandma have felt if you were complaining about dinner taking 7 minutes? You know, I'm not saying those things are bad things. I'm just saying culturally, all the blessings that we enjoy have created this faster pace of life. We are more blessed than the world has ever been. That's probably partly why we're more stressed than the world has ever been. Secondly, I would say this. All of those blessings in life, the blessings that you and I have as believers, come to us from Jesus, right? Whether directly or indirectly, whether he gives it to us personally or blesses us with it generally, all of these blessings come through Jesus. And so here's the thing. We are under obligation to use them as he directs and desires. Think about that for a minute. We freely admit that we have been blessed by the Lord. I see it all over Facebook, right? The Lord has blessed me so much. Hashtag blessed. And we're talking about our houses, our finances, our cars, our family. But here's the thing. Why did he bless you with those things? Ultimately, he blessed you with those things so that you would use them the way that he desires, and in many cases, the way that he specifically directs us to. If you don't know about that, well, it's in the Bible from the beginning to the end. Just look at what God says to Abram in Genesis chapter 12, verse 3. God tells Abram, he says, I will bless those who bless you, and I will curse anyone who treats you with contempt. And look at what he says. And all the peoples on earth will be blessed through you. So what God's telling Abram, the man that he's going to use to create the nation of Israel, his chosen people on the earth, God tells Abram, I'm going to bless you so that I can bless everyone through you. I think he would say the same thing to us today. I'm going to bless you so that I can bless everyone through you. Or what about towards the back of our Bible in the New Testament? This is Paul writing to his protege in the faith, Timothy, in 1 Timothy chapter 6, starting in verse 17. Timothy reads this from Paul. Paul writes, he says, instruct those who are rich in the present age to not be arrogant or to set their hope on the uncertainty of wealth, but on God, who richly provides us with all things to enjoy. Instruct them to do what is good, to be rich in good works, to be generous and willing to share, storing up treasure for themselves as a good foundation for the coming age, so that they may take hold of what is truly life. Now, there's a lot going on in here. We don't have time to unpack it all, but just a few things. Paul tells Timothy, instruct those who are rich, and you may not feel rich, but like we've already said, you are, we are. If you live in America in 2025, there's a good chance that historically speaking, you are rich. But then he says, instruct them not to set their hope on that richness, but on God, who richly provides us with those things. Number one, so that we may enjoy them, but more than that, so that through them we could do what is good, so that we could be rich in good works, generous, willing to share, so that in our good works, in our generosity, in our sharing, we would store up for ourselves treasures in heaven that would lay us a foundation for the life to come. And then he uses this phrase at the end, so that. In the Greek, the original language, that is a purpose clause. Paul is saying this is the purpose for all of those blessings, so that you may take hold of what is truly life. Here's what's important. Those blessings aren't life, but the way that we use those blessings can help us find what is truly life. And that is a vibrant, growing, and overflowing relationship with Jesus Christ. And then I think the final implication isn't just that we are more blessed than we realize. It's not just that we're under obligation to use those blessings as Jesus would desire and direct, but while this life and its blessings are a gift, and we've already just hinted at this, we know that this life is not all that there is. This life is temporary, and you and I are to make the most of it while we can. Jesus says this to his disciples in John chapter 9, verse 4. He says, "We must do the works of him who sent me while it is day. Night is coming when no man can work." Now, Jesus was speaking to his disciples specifically to tell them, hey, there's some things that I need to do now while I'm here because I'm not going to be here forever. But that principle was true for every single one of them. There's coming a time when you can't do these things, do them now. The life we've been given here on earth is temporary, and we are to use it as much as we can for the will of Jesus, the good of our neighbor, and the expansion of the kingdom as much as possible while we can. Paul says this in Ephesians chapter 5, verse 15. He says, pay careful attention then to how you walk, not as unwise people, but as wise, making most of the time, because the days are evil. So don't be foolish, but understand what the Lord's will is. So what Paul understands is that we are living in a world that is perishing. We are living in a life that is temporary. And so you and I, as followers of Jesus, are under obligation to make the most of the time that he has given us for the good of our neighbor and the glory of Jesus. And we need to live under that implication. So when we proclaim, and maybe you already have this holiday season, I'm just so blessed. But what are the implications of that? Number one, you're more blessed than you realize. Number two, those blessings that come from Jesus give us an obligation to use them the way he would want. And then number three, the blessings that he gives us in this life, we can only use in this life because this life itself is temporary. And I think here's the rub. When we thank God for all of these blessings that he gives us, but we don't live in light of these implications, we're functionally being hypocrites, right? We're going to say that these come from Jesus, but then pretend like it's just a free lunch, that, hey, Jesus is giving this to us because I'm awesome. But there's so much more to it than that. The blessings that we receive aren't simply for us to enjoy. They're not simply there to make our life easier. Yes, that may be a piece of it, but by no means is it all of it. These blessings are given to us so that we can use them for a greater purpose, the good of our neighbor and the glory of Jesus. Jesus himself taught about this, and really I think one of the places that you see it most clear is in Luke chapter 12. In Luke chapter 12, Jesus is teaching his disciples really how to handle blessings. And much of what Jesus teaches about in that chapter is about blessings and how we use them. So let's just read a couple of excerpts from this teaching of Jesus. The first will be from Luke chapter 12, verse 16. It says, "Then he, Jesus, told them a parable. A rich man's land was very productive, and he thought to himself, well, what should I do, since I don't have anywhere to store my crops? I'll do this," he said. "I'll tear down my barns and build bigger ones and store all my grain and my goods there. And then I'll say to myself, You have many goods stored up for many years. Take it easy. Eat, drink, and enjoy yourself. But God said to him, you fool, this very night your life is demanded of you. And the things you've prepared, whose will they be? Jesus says that's how it is with the one who stores up treasure for himself and is not rich toward God. So what Jesus does is he gives us a warning of those who would hoard the blessings of this life. It's temporary. And what are you going to do hoarding all these blessings? And then before you realize, step into eternity and have to leave them all behind. No, we are blessed, like Abram, to bless others. And we're only promised to be able to bless others right now because we don't know what the future holds. But then he goes on, skipping down several verses after he teaches a little bit differently on the same subject. He comes back in verse 42 of Luke 12, and Jesus says this, the Lord said, who then is the faithful and sensible manager his master will put in charge of his household servants to give them their allotted food at the proper time? And he says this, blessed is the servant whom the master finds doing his job when he comes. Truly I tell you, he will put him in charge of all of his possessions. But if that servant says in his heart, my master's delaying his coming, and he starts to beat the male and female servants, and to eat and drink and get drunk, that servant's master will come on a day when he does not expect and take him at an hour he does not know. He will cut him into pieces and assign him a place with the unfaithful. And that servant who knew his master's will and didn't prepare himself or do it will be severely beaten. But the one who did not know and did what deserved punishment will receive a light beating. And then Jesus says this, from everyone who has been given much, much will be required. And from the one who has been entrusted with much, even more will be expected. Now, I don't know about you, but as an American citizen living in 2025, this is very convicting to me because I understand how rich I am through the blessings that Jesus has given me. And more than given me, the blessings that Jesus has entrusted to me. Because ultimately, like you, I know they all come from him. And in this parable, Jesus gives the warning that what are we going to do when the master returns? Will we be ready, having made good use of the blessings that he's entrusted to us? Or are we using them selfishly for our own earthly temporary pleasure and our fleshly temporary desires? And Jesus warns us, to whom much is given, much is expected. I think that's us. Maybe you've heard it like this. If you're a nerd like me, 100% you have. With great power comes great responsibility. Those are the final words Peter Parker's Uncle Ben says to him before he passes away, and they shape Peter Parker's life and his career as Spider-Man, always pushing him to push himself to the limits, sacrifice for others, go above and beyond. Why? Because with great power, which is sticking on walls and spider sense and super strength, but with great power comes great responsibility. That's essentially what Jesus told us. With great power comes great responsibility. With great blessing comes great obligation. To whom much is given, much is expected. And so as blessed as we really are too blessed not to be stressed. I don't know that life is ever going to completely slow down. So the question is, how do we make the most of it now? How do we make the most of the time we've been given and the blessings that we've been entrusted with? So over the next 3 weeks, what we're going to do is we're going to look at some very specific ways to reorient ourselves and our blessings so that when Jesus returns, we would be faithful in how we're using them. So I hope you'll be back, whether you're catching up online or, if you would, to make your way to join us in person. I think this series is going to be powerful as we learn what it looks like to live a blessed, even if it means sometimes stressed, life. But maybe right now, you would just want to stop and be thankful for all the ways that you've been blessed, and that you would begin to seek ways to use those blessings for the good of your neighbor and the glory of your Savior. Let me pray for you. Jesus, we're thankful for the time that you've given us. God, we're thankful for the blessings that you've given us. And I pray that you would help us to use those in a way that would honor you, that would align with your heart for the good of our neighbor and the glory of your name. It is in that name, your name, we pray. In the name of Jesus. Amen.
Well, isn't that just the truth, that life is stressful and it's not just going to get better magically? And really, I think it does boil down to that. How are you going to manage that? How are you going to navigate that? There's a right way and there's a wrong way, and it gets a little nuanced. And so what I would invite you to do is reach out to us. We would love to keep that conversation going. We have a location pastor at every location that would love to sit down and talk with you about life and how to navigate some of these things. And as always, we want to let you know this is just a snapshot. This is not the full picture of who we are or what we want you to get out of a Sunday morning. So come join us at one of our in-person locations. We think you'll be better for it, and we think you'll be glad you did it. If you don't get a chance, can't wait to see you right here next week online.